which means single-room dwellings where the facilities like washroom and kitchen are shared with other people in the building, which are mostly used by people in the downtown east side and very poor people, because it's the cheapest form of housing that people in that insecure position can get. Because most regular landlords will not rent to people who are poor living in the downtown east side. In the same time period that they closed 415 single-room occupancy units, they opened only 99 new ones. So in that case specifically, there's a loss of over 300 single-room occupancy units for housing, which means that most of those people end up living in the streets, especially because women, women of color, and Aboriginal women are more likely than the male half of the population to become poor, as was recently stated by a report by the BC Federation of Labour on the situation of women. Because women are more likely to live in poverty, these closures in affordable housing affect women much, much more. The problem and issue of the missing women of the east side of Vancouver is directly caused by the fact that women still face now, in 2008, a huge lack of security, still a lot of threat of violence against them, and also increased poverty by all of the social conditions that exist in our society. And for a country like Canada and a metropolitan city like Vancouver, this is something which is a very big shame, and also would seem to people that this would not be a problem that would happen. However, we need only to look as far as the provincial government's policies, the inaction and ineffectiveness of the police department in this city alone to give any protection to women, and see why this is happening. And so our conclusion about this is that not only must all of the cuts from the BC Liberal government that attack and erode the rights and securities of women, those must all be reversed. We have to call on all of the authorities that exist and institutions that exist that are right now not doing their jobs to provide protection for women to go out there and do that, and to not make the safety of women an individual issue, an issue where you have to carry a whistle and depend on a whistle to give you safety if you are under threat of attack, which anyone will understand is not a very effective method of protection.
There's been a big focus on the media, in the media, about the lack of investigation, or this very poorly conducted investigation, which is important and is definitely a reflection of the amount of gender discrimination that exists in our society, that there is so little emphasis put on this. However, the more important question, which is why are there so many women going missing, is not being addressed, which is something that definitely we need to address.
I would like to also add that, as Nita was saying, the question about why women are going missing isn't really answered by focusing on the investigation, which I agree very much that the slow response, as well as slow response to then build up a case and even carry through the trial of one Robert Picton, is definitely characterized by the fact that the victims are women. And a good way to look at that is very easy for people to understand is that if there were right now, since the beginning of the 1980s, which is when the first of the missing women was last seen, since say 1983, if there were from 1983 until today 59 white 60-year-old men who were very wealthy and running major businesses in Canada, if they had all gone missing in the last 20 or so years, you can imagine that there would be a huge outcry and a huge investigation as to who in particular was targeting wealthy old men, especially wealthy old white men. And so the question of, or the issue of the fact that all of these victims are women, I think is very, very much highlighted if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum and see that if this was a crime that was happening to wealthy older men in particular, that the response of society would be much, much different. But because these are women, and also in particular poor women, they're easily brushed aside. And all of the social conditions that dictate the situation that they live in are blamed for why they're missing, and they're blamed, and the problem is just made individual and specific to their case and not seen as a systemic problem. There needs to be more education in our society about the problems of discrimination against women on a mass scale for everyone, students especially at a young age, so that the next generations and also and people in general will have a different understanding and better understanding of the challenges and issues that women face in order that we can improve our situation.
This is obviously something that the Conservative government, the federal government of Canada right now, and also the BC Liberals and provincial government and other authorities like the Vancouver Police Department are clearly not going to be reinstating any of this funding. They're going completely in the opposite direction. And so I think as women and supporters of women's rights, it's very important for us to be very actively getting involved in women's organizations and demanding that these things be reinstated, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to start working towards making progress. As an example of two important women's organizations that we can get involved with as women, there is the International Women's Day Committee that organizes in Vancouver, as Shakir mentioned at the beginning, and the contact information for that is the email iwd_Vancouver@gmail.com. Oh no, sorry, it's not this. Sorry, iwd_Vancouver@gmail.com. Also, Justice for Women, one of the organizations that I work with, can be contacted at justiceforwomen_Vancouver@yahoo.ca or at 604-780-7604.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you.